From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the Book of Esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet and William as the Professor.
From the keyboard to the boardroom. After show live stream. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Ross, Victoria Taylor, William Collis, Jeff Cohen. If you are new to the after show, welcome to the official after show. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in the industry. Now, for the live show specifically, we get to cover all the stuff that just didn't make it into the podcast. And best of all, we get to do it with you guys, the viewers, the fans, live. I want you guys to ask us questions, challenge us, get in our faces. This is the best part of the live stream. If you're a regular here, thank you guys for coming back every week. Make sure to tell your friends about the live stream. The more, the merrier here. And so please invite anyone you know who's interested in the industry to come participate every Wednesday night, 8:30 Eastern time in the live stream. Guys, how you guys all doing?
I'll go first, Paul. I'm doing very well. We were talking about it before.
William's like, I'm just so good. So good.
What? You want me to
William's on a high. I'll tell you why. William's on a high because he's got a TED Talk. The man, the myth, the legend himself, the professor of esports, has a TED Talk.
Yeah,
right?
Well, this is I got a TED Talk out. You guys can watch it. It's still featured on the main page of TED.com. For a while it was the first talk there. Now it's like the fourth or something because it launched on Monday. But yeah, I gotta tell you guys, and this is seriously, like, I'm proud to have done it because this was something I have wanted to do for a couple years, and I kind of worked at and tried, and I got it there. But I also want to say that the TED Talk is nowhere near as fun or as interesting as our podcast. So to be very fair, you're already getting the best of myself and a bunch of other people. So, but it was a good moment for me this week.
William, congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. My only beef was, you made some comments about lacrosse players that I really didn't appreciate. It felt very targeted. Just
I specifically was the yes. Early drafts of the script said, like Jeff Cohen, who played lacrosse.
Yeah, fair. I'm the one, Jeff, that convinced him to take that out. I was like, you know what? Yeah. This may hit wrong. I don't know. He's buying your company. Maybe take out the personal attack.
He said, everyone's going to know you're talking about Jeff Cohen anyway. Do you really have to leave it so on the nose? But
that's true. Yeah, you could have just at me,
yeah, that's true.
It's like Paul, when Paul likes to throw shade a lot, but he doesn't at the people. I always give him a hard time for that.
Me? I don't know what you're talking about. I do nothing of the sort.
The king of subtweeting over here.
Paul's never thrown shade at anyone in the esports industry.
Never. Everyone's just awesome and brilliant.
Is that the Twitter equivalent of talking behind somebody's back if you don't at them when you're talking about them?
Is this poor etiquette if we don't at them? Is that it?
You have to give them a chance to rebuttal. You have to give them an opportunity.
Yeah, but it's like, let's say we're at a conference, right? This is how I see it. Let's say we're at a conference, an esports conference, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. And we're having a chat, just the five of us, right? Yep. And I say, that Bobby Kotick guy, he has no clue what he's doing over there at Activision Blizzard, right? I don't have to yell it across so he can hear me. It's okay that I do it in this group. Yes, right? I mean...
Yeah, look, you're asking somebody who basically, despite loving video games, otherwise lives like a total Luddite, what technology, by the way, guys, true story, when I was getting this mic set up for my new mic setup, I had to call Paul and he had to walk me through, in excruciating detail, basic steps that any normal person should know. There's literally there's a cable that can only hook into one thing. And I was like, it doesn't hook in. And he's like, have you tried pushing it harder? And I was like, oh, it clicks in now. Yeah. And he's like, was that difficult? You know how sometimes when you're plugging in like something to charge. Like sometimes you have to push a little on the. I was useless.
It is interesting because I always thought that everyone in esports would be super tech savvy, right? Because it is kind of a techie industry, but I actually feel like I've run into more people who are just don't come from tech, right? Like it's not, there isn't a correlation. There isn't like a ton of tech people also in esports, which
when you say some people, are you talking about Jeff?
Yes.
Should I have added them?
You just
There's some people with more lax experience than
yeah, just hurling a ball, as William calls it.
I was not commenting on anyone specifically.
Okay,
I'll write that for the
See
record.
the king of subtweeting. Right back at it. It comes so naturally.
Seriously though, I think I like a big part of my talk at TED was about how like sports are great like that. I don't know. I hope that didn't get lost. Like partly it's just I also think games are great too, and I'm trying to put them on equal footing. But yeah.
All right, guys. Let me just tease the podcast for tomorrow. Stuff we covered on the podcast. Let me put it up here. So we talked what you can expect tomorrow on the podcast. 3 stories we did about Riot. One having, and guys, again, for the record, we can talk about any of these things over again on the live stream tonight. If you're in the chat, and I know a bunch of you are, and you want us to cover these things, just let us know. We can get back to them, even though it is coming on the podcast tomorrow. The first thing we talked about was Riot pairing a League of Legends tournament with a Valorant tournament back to back in the same venue, which is interesting. The second thing we talked about was Riot stepping up promotion of their Valorant esports tournaments inside of Valorant. So this was like a banner that was inside of Valorant. And then Verizon sponsoring Riot, but across properties. So sponsoring both Valorant and League of Legends. So sort of unique approaches to partnerships and tournaments that Riot's doing by leveraging both of their properties in a way that I think no one else in the space is. That was the gist of the discussion on this. The other thing we talked about was Amazon. So we had some conversations on Amazon launching this Game On app, a platform for sharing mobile clips. The question we had, and I throw this to everyone in the chat, which is why not call it Twitch, or why not have it under the Twitch brand, which is interesting. We also talked about Twitch signing interactive content deal with FIBA, which is the International Basketball Federation, and whether that sort of fit with Twitch's sort of brand or goals. And then third, Amazon, again, 3 Riot stories, 3 Amazon stories here. Amazon's head of Fire TV and Luna Cloud Gaming leaving for Unity, which Luna is their big cloud gaming initiative. There was a lot of hype around it, and now the top guy there is gone. So those are, and we talked about, didn't want to forget this one, Epic Games buying the developer of Fall Guys. So those are the stories we did on the podcast. Any of you guys, like Lindsay, Victoria, Jeff, William, William, you and I talked about all these things already, but any of the others have thoughts on any of these, or something that sticks out that maybe you have a comment on or interesting thought on?
Well, I think the 2 that are most interesting are this Fortnite one, and then I'm forgetting which one the other one was. Can you run through them real quick again?
I think the Game On app.
Yeah, the Game On was the other one that I thought was the most.
Yeah, why not Twitch? Why not Twitch something?
I don't have a great answer, but it is a good question. Why they wouldn't, like YouTube has a mobile app and it's YouTube. It's not, Gizmodo. It's just YouTube. So I don't know why they would have, completely different branding. It's an interesting question.
I mean, Twitch clips too is a very important part of like the Twitch experience, which is also weird.
It's just like why? I don't know. This is one that I'm gonna wake up in the middle of the night and I'm gonna be like, why? It's like an existential question, shouting into the void. Like, why?
And Lindsay, I know you're gonna be offended at this, but I kind of was like, who cares about international basketball? It was like the NFL's on Twitch, right? They broadcast NFL games, so I get that they're not just gaming and just chatting is a huge section, but I feel like international basketball feels like maybe have we gone too far? Like, have we strayed too far from esports and sports? And this is like so niche. It's like,
Not for the people living in those countries, though. It's a really good way to expand to that audience.
I don't know. I don't know what the viewership for international basketball is like. I'll be honest.
It's pretty high for the people who actually live in the countries where it's played, though. So, I mean, like a lot of Eastern Bloc countries, it's kind of like it's big in Europe. It's actually very big in Europe. So
yeah.
It's a good way to expand to that audience. I don't know. Basketball is obvious. I'm extremely biased because I love basketball the most, but they also have the best way of incorporating gaming into their future. So I'm not surprised. Out of all the major sports leagues, I mean.
It could also be, I think Lindsay makes two good points. One, it's probably a pretty cheap customer acquisition cost, asset for those regions. So you bring in new players or new people in those regions. And then also it's a way to experiment. So maybe they want to try some new different things. Like, for example, I'm totally just throwing this out, they could try betting, like, so integrating betting into the platform. You don't necessarily want to do that with an NFL game or with, something that, maybe you're paying more money. You don't want to mess up the user experience, but international basketball, like you said, quote unquote, who cares about it? Well, that's a good way to experiment, put ads on the, digitally imposed on the floor of the court. If people are pissed, whatever, like who cares? It's international basketball, but it's a good way to kind of iterate and figure out what might work when you do that $1 billion NFL deal, stuff like that.
It's good. It's an interesting thought. Well, and that comes back to sort of the game on thing, which is, the discussion we had was, is this Amazon sort of hedging against a potential failure, right? We don't want to call it Twitch if this mobile app thing flops, because there's, reputational risk to our Twitch brand. Is that the thinking there? That's the question. Martin, I just want to read this comment. He goes, "There you go, Paul. A big publisher did snap up a big indie success. Shame it's the one that's currently the least relevant." I mean, Martin, I would argue they're kind of all no longer relevant. And the question I had for William on the podcast was, there seems to be like a lag, right? Like the acquisition didn't happen at the height of Fall Guys popularity. It's happened, I guess, about a year later. So now 3 months from now, will we see the Among Us developers bought? And then 3 months later, the Phasmophobia developers bought? And then 3 months later, the Valheim developers bought? Like, is there just 1 year of lag? And so
what's interesting to me is that Epic did this, and that's interesting for two reasons. One, I kind of will rip on you a little bit, Paul, because you've been talking about how Epic's so distracted, but yet this has been your big pitch. Hey, why doesn't anyone snap up these developers? So it seems like, maybe
distracted, but listening to the podcast. So I
was about to say,
making time.
Maybe Tim Sweeney has been listening to the podcast. So, that's, good on him. The other point I was going to make is it's interesting that Epic bought them in the sense that Epic is private. These kind of deals, when you're talking about you're buying an asset that's already peaked its revenue and like the comps are going to be really hard the next year. They're kind of hard, I think, for public companies to do because the backwards looking revenue is always going to be better than the forwards looking revenue, at least for kind of one calendar cycle. So I wonder if that's why, we haven't seen, to your point, a lot of public companies doing these kinds of acquisitions. And maybe that's why Epic was willing to kind of stick their neck out.
So off of that, let me ask you this. Do we care? So, because William sort of made a comment on the podcast, and I want to get to what William's comment was, but do you care what the purchase price was here? It was not disclosed. There were obviously no financial terms disclosed. Is there any number? I mean, obviously there are numbers where this doesn't make sense, but do we think, Epic paid a number here that doesn't make sense? Or do we sort of not care what the number is because buying publishers right now, again, is kind of a land grab, and if you've got cash, it makes sense. Like, do the financial sort of details here really, really matter at the end of the day?
I can go last on this, or if someone else wants to step in. I certainly have thoughts, but
I already talked about this on the podcast, so I feel like I
want to hear your thoughts, Jeff. Now I'm curious.
I mean, yes, obviously, anytime you're buying any asset, the details matter, right? If you're paying a ridiculous price, you're never going to get a return on that capital. And I know that's not that, that's taking your question to the ultimate extreme. Yeah. But I do think, when you're doing these deals, you have to be very cognizant, right? If you are particularly talking about a game that doesn't have a long tail of revenue, you're effectively buying this so that you can create Fall Guys 2, you're going to have to spend the capital to create that. You're going to have to hopefully reacquire a lot of those players, and very, I don't have the quote unquote data, but very few sequels in the gaming industry do as well as kind of the original. Maybe this is more of a mobile thing than a console PC thing. Like the sequel usually does worse than the original.
So Jeff, if I'm reading between the lines of your answer, are you saying that it doesn't really matter if they paid 10 times, next year's revenue or 14 times next year's revenue, that fundamentally the acquisition, if it makes sense from a strategic standpoint for Epic, it's probably a good deal? Like this is what I'm trying to tease out.
I was kind of saying, I guess I was kind of trying to say, I think I was trying to say the exact opposite, that it definitely, you can easily overpay, now there's, it all is relative, right? If you're paying a small enough dollar amount and you're just bringing in another team and you're saying, hey, those guys are really talented, we need more talented developers, we think we can, have them go do a project that's going to be, a great return. Sure. But if you're buying it basically for the IP rather than the team, then you really have to be careful. Then I think you're like, I would say almost the exact opposite of what your point was. Like you have to be incredibly careful because, we know how fleeting these IPs can be, particularly, when you're talking about a kind of flash in the pan like Fall Guys. So yeah, I mean, I think I'd be very cautious on that.
Martin has a comment Victoria's going to love here. He says, tell that to Dadish 2, Jeff. Evidently, Dadish 2 was much better than Dadish 1. So
thank you. Mic drop, right?
Wasn't that the game that there was no Dadish 1 or something? I don't know.
No, that was a joke.
All right, guys. Let's unless anyone has any other thoughts on
Lindsay, Victoria, what did you think? I'm curious what you guys thought.
Jeff, I don't know. I'm not going to go up against the financial guy here on this, but before we moved on, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Game On app.
Yeah. What's the thinking there, Victoria?
So I don't fully understand it, but I've been trying to understand it and understand why they didn't launch it under the Twitch brand. This is what I'm thinking, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong or if I've misunderstood the concept here. But I see the value of it being on its own, completely separated from Twitch, is that it has its own purpose. So because it's short clips, you can do things more like quick tips or just like tips and tricks in game, like really quick how-tos or, I don't know, reveals of like secrets or really cool things or glitches. I don't know. And then I'm also realizing that games that would otherwise not get the attention, like the spotlight on Twitch, will be able to trend, which is pretty cool as long as the clip itself is significant. And then I'm thinking maybe it's more of an Instagram where instead of looking at Twitch and thinking that it would be extremely daunting and it would take a really long time to build up a follower,ship, that if you just have one really awesome clip, you could potentially go viral for that one clip. So it might seem more approachable. But I don't really understand much beyond that, why they would separate it.
All good points. I think all correct. I just don't think any of them lead to the conclusion of therefore it should be a different brand.
I know.
It's like Twitch clips are such an important part of the Twitch service. Like people who don't stream on Twitch still clip gameplay of other people on Twitch and share those clips. Like the sharing of clips, in fact, was such a significant feature for Twitch that the sleepy management over at YouTube Gaming basically just knocked it off like 2 years later, or 3 years or 4 years later, however long it took them to sort of wake up and realize this was important. But they basically just knocked it off. So like clipping of gameplay is not new. In fact, there are startups that do this now that are, trying to get in by doing just clipping of gameplay and sharing of those clips. It still is weird to me that, this is not the Twitch brand. The part of the discussion William and I had was, is this like an MSN esports hub situation, right? Where it's like some team in the basement at Amazon that didn't know what else is going on at Amazon and has no contact with anyone else at Amazon, sort of just, working on this thing and they put it out there. That's one option. Second option is, is this they're just worried about the risk that it fails, so they don't want to put the Twitch brand on it? Or is it a bigger problem at Amazon that they're just disorganized and don't have a concrete gaming strategy, right? With one brand and sort of how they're going to play across all these sort of places, mobile, online, streaming, all these things.
Yeah,
I
and maybe
don't
it's
know.
just what you said there, is that the fact that Twitch clips are so big and there's so much opportunity there, that maybe perhaps in making them two completely separate entities, there can be a lot of value gained from that. I don't know.
To me, it seems like making it a separate entity opens you up, I suppose, to wider use of the platform. But in doing so, you only ask yourself to compete with other video-based sharing platforms like Instagram and TikTok, whereas you already have a hold on the gamer audience because you are Twitch.
Yeah.
So I suppose you can make the argument that they're opening themselves up to be a wider platform for video sharing. But right when they do that, there's also a million different forms of competition. And they already have the stronghold in a specific market with the audience that they need. And they don't need to enter into that competition with other markets. So I there's a lot of people on Amazon making a lot of decisions. So I'm not going to pin it down and say I have all the answers for why they would do this. But from the outside, it definitely doesn't make a ton of sense.
I want to move on here, guys. I just want to leave with chat one thought, which is I brought it up on the podcast. We discussed it on the podcast, so you'll have to tune in tomorrow to see how that conversation ends. But one thought is Twitch. Amazon no longer sees Twitch as a gaming brand. They see Twitch as something bigger, right? This is why you have Just Chatting. This is why you have international basketball, and therefore they don't want to pigeonhole Twitch as a gaming brand. So anything gaming specific, they put it under a new brand. Just a thought. Tune into the podcast tomorrow to hear that conversation. All right, let's talk about Google, guys, because there were 3 Google stories this week, all about the same thing, and really sort of fascinating deconstruction of what happened. It's the NTSB coming in after the plane has gone down, and they're picking up the pieces off the side of the mountain here and wondering what actually happened. And there's 3 articles here. I'll show them all. One is from Insider. The headline is Google Insiders Reveal Why the Company's Ambitious Plan to Create Major Video Games Fell Apart. The second is sources at Google's failed game studio say it should have just bought studios and left them alone like Microsoft. And the third article here is Google's Stadia gaming division reportedly missed its user goals by hundreds of thousands of gamers.
It must have had pretty low goals. I mean, to only miss by hundreds of thousands, I would have guessed they would have missed by millions. But
you think they would have missed by millions?
That's the spice corner from Jeff Cohen there, folks.
the hot
him for the Spice Emporium.
I mean, doesn't that seem like really low? They missed their user goals by hundreds of thousands. Like, what were the goals?
I have a funny feeling their user goals were hundreds of thousands.
Well,
so.
Yeah, because what can you assume is ramped for early? I mean, because how many you had to have a plugged-in device, right? Like, how many controllers and things could they have gotten to market? Like, yeah,
I think last I heard Stadia, and this was now probably 4 or 5 months ago, I think Stadia had less than 10 or 15,000 active users. Like very, very, very small numbers here, right? This is at Google scale. This is not even. I don't think anyone even pays any attention to this.
Still, mean, their goals were pretty low. I guess my joke, and I was actually also being somewhat serious. I would have thought their goal would have been like a few million users, right? Like if you're launching a new console and you're Google and you want to be serious, like I don't know, you're really gonna go to your manager and say like, here, our goal is we're gonna get 50,000 people. Like what? We're Google. Like what? 50,000 people. Like what are we gonna make? Like a couple $100,000? Like this is Google. We're talking to make a dent. Like YouTube has 500 million people that watch it every day. Probably. Like I would have thought they would have said, hey, we can get a couple million people within a year.
Maybe as that project progressed, maybe they scaled their goal down.
Yeah, probably.
Look, the article actually mentions how Google had planned to hire 2,000 people in 5 years, just to the games development stuff.
Yeah.
So they had some ambition.
It's just weird because that didn't really come across with the launch of Stadia though. that they had that much muscle commitment behind it. You know what I mean?
What do you mean? I had negative latency.
Okay, guys,
They trotted out the YouTube
I mean, they
gaming
did have
guys.
this. They had the
Leaky
CEO.
quiz.
I think the CEO of Google was at the launch.
Yeah, and
I
he
mean,
did announce the GDC.
It was in San
yeah,
Fran,
but-
so it wasn't
yeah.
like he needed to travel on like the bus across the street. But that was kind of a show of at least some sort of commitment that they got Sundar to kind of come in.
I guess that's fair. Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the headline of the second article I read, which was Google should have, like, the sources inside Google said they should have just bought studios instead of starting one and left them alone like Microsoft. Like, does anyone feel like maybe that would have worked inside of Google, or is it truly a Google culture problem?
Well, to be very fair, like I actually think that's quite a smart comment, right? But not because I think Google is incompetent and can't make a great game studio, because I think they could, I think they could have, right? Like, clearly they didn't necessarily pull it off this time, but I think, like, you're telling me, if you said, William, do you think Google could open a great game studio? I'd be like, yeah, probably. I think it's smart to do that because it de-risks the thing, right? Like, the reality is, like, there's so much risk in launching a new platform business, and the quality of game is so important. Like, you should take a lesson from Microsoft and just buy a game that's late stage in life that has high promise, like Halo, right? That's the classic example. Oh, this looks good. Let's swoop in, buy it, make it exclusive, and, buy 2 or 3 of those types of late cycle games. And I think you'd be very surprised at, the performance you have. The flip side, though, to this, though, which maybe, I don't know, I can defend Google here, which is maybe this is the sort of thing where they felt like the games needed to be developed specifically for the platform, because there were real limitations of around cloud computing that perhaps, as bullish as they were talking to the market, perhaps they were aware of them privately and recognized that games would need to be developed for this use case. But I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting one, the obvious one to me, the obvious one to me for Google Stadia, I just have to come right out and say it, is the Gears of War Tactics game. Do you guys remember Gears of War Tactics?
Mm-hmm. Why is that the obvious one?
Because it was the weird offshoot of Gears of War, right? That, like, nobody asked for, but it was actually a very good game. But that type of, like, semi-real time, but not gameplay would have been perfect for Stadia, because input lag and latency wouldn't have, like, it was, I don't know. I mean, that was the one that I always thought to myself, why didn't you scoop in and take the team that did that and have them do, something? Because there's, like, I do think there are form factors of game that could have worked very well on Stadia, right?
Well, William, I think your point is apps. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just wanting to read this. Martin says, hell, they didn't even bother launching it here. Martin, I assume you mean here, Australia. That doesn't scream global dent in gaming market to me. Sorry, Jeff, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say they absolutely should have gone after games that were unique to cloud gaming and game experiences that could only be built or only be played via the cloud. The problem is, and maybe they were, but they stood up these game studios about 6 months before they closed them. It takes 2 or 3 years to build a game. So it just, the whole strategy didn't make sense. Like, you can't be like, hey, we're going to bring in all these people to make a game, and then 6 months later be like, we're shutting you down. You haven't made any good games yet.
Yeah, what are you guys doing there? You had all 6 months to make a game.
Yeah, like,
hold on.
By the time they onboarded and got their, like, Gmail account, they probably never even went to the
Activision Blizzard is hanging out over there being like, you guys, you want to...
It's like, we're still going through the HR like policies, man.
Maybe the conversation went more like this, like, hey guys, we only have 10,000 users on Stadia, so maybe you're making a game for no one, so go home. Like instead of, like, you didn't make a game in 6 months. Like,
fair,
that
but
could have been
a colossal failure of management ahead of time. Like, they should have, like, scratched their head and been like, well, we need some content. Maybe we shouldn't launch the platform until we have content that's going to bring people to the platform, if we're going to shut down the platform before the content comes.
Let me just read you some tidbits from the Insider article that I would love for you guys to comment on. First of all, the inside. So again, they spoke to sources inside Google that were involved with the project. Former Google gaming employees said the company never committed to the project, quote, okay. And one quote said, I question how much the execs understand what they got into. Okay. And then I'll just read sort of one segment here from the article. It says, I question how much the execs above Stadia leadership understand what they got into, one current Stadia staffer told Wired. the commitments made and overcommitments and the ability to keep those commitments. It was difficult to hire up staff, the former employees said, and they hit roadblocks with Google's internal security teams while attempting to access the technology required to make high-end games. Major video games often take 3 to 5 years to make, but Google was reportedly starting from virtually zero in March 2019. By the time the majority of the staff were hired, the pandemic reportedly caused Google to freeze most hiring with the exception of a few strategic areas. The studio was not yet fully formed and ready to produce games. That put on the brakes and was a statement. We interpreted it as a lack of commitment from Google to make content. I mean, they're blaming sort of this hiring freeze. They couldn't ramp up, therefore they couldn't make games. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. I sort of said a lot there, Victoria.
I mean, the comment still exists. Like back to what Jeff said is they said that they started from absolutely nothing in 2019, and the expectation was that they were going to be pumping out titles, right? It was never a resource problem. It was just, I guess, a management problem and expectation problem. But I agree. Why wouldn't they have launched when they were ready, right? It seems like they rushed. I don't know why they felt they wanted to rush through if they weren't in a position. Like they couldn't have projected success, right? Back to that goal of being off by hundreds of thousands. Like, how could they have projected success knowing their situation? So it just seems odd that they would put themselves in a position to fail. It seems like they almost knew they were going to fail going forward.
Well, then doesn't to your point, Victoria, doesn't some of these comments really ring true? Like they're saying the execs don't understand this gaming thing and they didn't commit to it. Had they really committed to it, you probably would have seen that games division operating like years before the launch of Stadia. No, like is that am I
probably? I mean, probably they probably didn't have they probably didn't know how to start, and they thought that just by we'll hire up to 2,000 people, that all of a sudden they'd be able to rush things forward just because they had the money to do so. But then they probably learned that, and with the pressure of the pandemic, of course, that just because they have unlimited resources doesn't mean that they can create magic.
Lindsay, do you feel like the whole pandemic hiring freeze thing is maybe a bit of corporate speak that was fed to the people, to these employees at Stadia, to make them to give them a reason why this whole thing is getting shut down?
This just seemed ill-fated from the start, and I don't think the pandemic helped. I think it's hard to tell exactly what was going on internally, obviously, and there's plenty of smart people that work at Google. What it comes across as is they thought it was going to be easier than it was, and they're like, we're going to launch this thing, and then they didn't hire the right people, and then they continued to not hire the right people, and then they made all these promises they couldn't keep, and then I think that they thought it was going to be easy to build a system, and we have YouTube, and everyone will buy our stuff because we're Google, and then people just didn't, and it just was just kind of funny because Google's had plenty of failed products before.
But like all of
but
that,
it's a lot.
all of that stuff I'm okay with. Like I'm okay with them having like some institutional arrogance and some user funnel and look what we can try. The thing Jeff hit the nail on the head is that timeline. Like it's like you open the studio, if you want stuff out in 2020, you open the studio in like 2015, 2016.
Or
like
you product later, like
or you launch the product. It's like really that is the red flag to me that indicates they didn't recognize the scope or the difficulty of games development, right? But who knows? I mean,
let me push back on that. Yeah, because you said you can get past the institutional arrogance, right? But fundamentally, isn't the institutional arrogance the crux of the problem you're describing? In the sense that, right, if they were not arrogant, right, they would have said, look, we know this system is new. This cloud gaming thing's new. We need content to launch with it. Instead, their arrogance forced them into a position with like, we're the greatest ever. We don't need exclusive content, right? Everyone's going to make games for our system, for our cloud gaming thing, right? It's the institutional arrogance that made them think about content way, way too late. Like by the time they thought about it and made a decision about it and actually put a team in place, Stadia was already dead.
Well, it's probably because Google is a tech company, right? And so like they were probably focused on the technical issues, the technical challenges, right? And that was like the big thing they thought they needed to solve, right? And then only later did they sort of realize, oh, we built this really cool technical thing, but there's nothing to do with it. You know, it's the classic thing of like, you know, the inventing, like the, you know, what did they say? Like, you know, the tool in search of the hammer in search of the nail, right? You know, like, but yeah, guys, I want to kind of close on this because this is probably going to be the last time I'm guessing we're going to talk about Stadia in a while. But
I mean, until they actually shut down the service.
Until they launch Stadia, until it's a trick and they announce Stadia next.
No.
That was an Anthem next.
The next time we talk about this, it's too soon, William. Too soon. Anthem has been dead only a few days. Like,
Stadia.
Rest in peace.
The next tagline is going to be something like the future of gaming.
Yeah.
Martin hit it on the nose here, which is they should have actually put on the brakes, though, delay the whole platform to align with the content. Yes, or have been thinking about the content sooner. No question. All right, guys, let's move on. This one, what do we want to do? We want to do. Let's talk about Jerry Bruckheimer. This one's kind of cool. Jeff, I know you had a take on this. By the way, go check out EEG's newsletter called The Push. If you go follow Jeff on LinkedIn, there's an easy way to go get it and sign up for it. But I think, Jeff, you commented on this story in that newsletter, and I kind of love. Hang on, I don't know why this is not coming up now. I love this story because it comes back to a common theme, which is intersection of gaming and movies, right? Or gaming and sort of more traditional forms of entertainment. And this is Jerry Bruckheimer joining the Skills board of directors. Jerry Bruckheimer, famous for, tons of big blockbuster action movies. I don't know if anyone has a favorite Jerry Bruckheimer movie. I think if
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Really? That would be your pick?
I think that's like the only one I know that I was 99% sure he actually did. The rest, is he Top Gun?
Top Gun. Come on.
Then, Top Gun
Pirates of the Caribbean beats out Top Gun.
I just rewatched.
No. Without a doubt.
Do you have the ability to kick her out? Kick her out. Get her out of here.
Lindsay, I'm putting you down here just for that one.
Well, welcome, Lindsay. The bottom means we're in trouble. I just rewatched Top Gun. It's a good movie.
It's a great one of the greatest of all time.
It's the best. I won't see Top Gun 2.
This is totally off topic, but I've been doing like an 80s, 90s movie kick. Like I watched Aliens and like all those classics. Like honestly, those movies are good. Like they're really good. They hold up. Like I was expecting to be grossly disappointed, and I was not.
Highly underrated Jerry Bruckheimer movie, The Rock. Really one of my favorites.
I remember The Rock. That was
Nicolas Cage. Great movie.
And they have to inject themselves with like the serum directly into their heart.
Spoiler alert here. Come on.
Oh my God. Spoilers for a 90 movie starring Nick Cage. Like what's the penalty for that? Like,
what do you guys make of this? I'm curious. I know Jeff commented in the newsletter, so please go, follow the newsletter to get that. But Lindsay, Victoria, William, curious how you feel about Jerry Bruckheimer joining the board of Skills. Skills does, mobile, like player to player kind of competitive mobile esports.
First of all, like he's done stuff previously, I'd like to point out, right? Like he's been on the board of, I think,
ZeniMax. He was on the board of ZeniMax.
You must have read my take in the newsletter.
Oh, did I? Am I just gonna, maybe I should just have his push note and be reading it like, and I think he was on. So he's not like, like new to this, or he's not like lost to that. Like, it's not like, this is not like a reach for him out of left field, right? He's been in games before. Skills is interesting though, because, ZeniMax is like, set piece action sequence games a little bit like, Doom, right?
Yeah. Doom, Fallout.
Yeah. Like this, I don't I don't know. I feel a bit, I feel a bit like, but maybe this is the direction. First of all, Skills has a ton of money, right? So maybe this is just like, a consequence of having a ton of money is you can get, heavyweights. But also, maybe this speaks to potential in terms of partnerships that Skills can generate going forward, because there's such a mass market play right now. And Jerry Bruckheimer is really like a mass market director. Let's be honest. Like maybe there's just a ton of synergy there. You know what I mean? Like maybe there's just a ton of synergy in terms of like, relationships he can open up, studio, pilot co-gaming things he can help launch. I imagine there's quite a lot of value even aside from just he has some experience on gaming companies previously.
Jeff, I know you follow Skills quite closely and what they're doing there. Remind me again, because I think you had told me this. Like the majority of their business is on like 1 or 2 games, right?
Yeah, it's like 80% of their revenue comes from 3 games. It's like Solitaire, Bingo, Blitz, and like Rummy or something like that. And it's from actually, and it's like 90% of their revenue comes from 2 publishers, which is interesting. It would be interesting like to invest privately in those companies because
that's scary.
But yeah, so this is
it's
that point.
That's terrifying. You're kidding me, right?
No, I'm not.
No, but that's terrifying because that says either if I'm the publisher, I'm just going to make my own Skills platform, and like that's like a real risk there. I feel like I don't know.
Yeah,
so
it's a big risk.
I mean,
they're trying to diversify, and that's one of the reasons why the stock shot up so much when they did this NFL deal, because they're basically now they have the NFL license that they're kind of hosting a big competition where a bunch of different developers can kind of make an NFL mobile game. So that will hopefully, for their sake, bring in more talented developers to the platform. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a risk.
I have a question, but I have to point out the great Neil Duffy's comment. GMBL rocket ship to the moon, quote of the day. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
Neil has a way with words.
The thing I would say that's interesting about the Skills, and William, you kind of hit on it. It's like Skills doesn't, Jerry Bruckheimer is synonymous with entertainment, right? So esports is entertainment. Jerry Bruckheimer is entertainment. Jerry Bruckheimer esports, like boom, makes sense. But Skills doesn't host like tournaments or anything like that. They don't like, if this was, hey, Riot brings Jerry Bruckheimer to their board, I'd be like, okay, they host these massive events. Like he can create cool, things alongside that, entertainment experiences. Skills is like your aunt plays like Candy Crush and like bets $5. Like, there's no spectacle entertainment to it. So maybe that's their future they're envisioning, but it's not their present.
You gotta go. Oh, go for it, Victoria. Go for it.
I was just going to say I had complete similar thoughts. So right away when I heard about this, I thought that it spoke to where they want to be. Because like Solitaire, like we're not talking about sexy, mind-blowing experiences here. So we're talking about bringing in Top Gun, right? And back to William's point, I agree. First things that come to mind here are the ability to like his network, 100%. So what connections he can bring in long-term. And then of course, just diversifying, right? So what can they do? I think it's just that extra inspiration they're bringing in. How are they going to utilize him? I don't know, but I think that no matter what, he's going to bring in value.
Well, Skills has kind of I won't say problem, but it's a strategic sort of decision that they need to make at some point, which is, are we going to make games that we put on our platform, right? Or will we partner or invite developers of other games to use our platform to bet against each other, right? And sort of, I don't think they've I don't know, I'm not privy to those meetings, but I don't think they've sort of decided one direction or another conclusively. Maybe you guys have a different feeling about that. And so maybe the Jerry Bruckheimer thing is like sort of pushing in the direction of we're going to make our own, and we need a creative guy like this to push that forward. Because I don't see why else. Like Jerry doesn't add anything to, Victoria's point, to the discussion of, how can we more effectively monetize solitaire competition, right? Like, so why would you bring in a creative guy like that unless you had ambition to either create your own games or potentially vet partners for the platform? I don't know. Where do you guys think Skills is leaning towards with a pickup like this from a strategy standpoint?
Yeah, and to your point, they're bringing him in before there's been any like acquisition or partnership announcement. So
True.
it's an interesting point.
I think they're definitely leaning towards the platform approach. Now they are investing, almost like publishing some games. They're not, to my understanding, going to become a developer. They might help some developers by publishing their games, help them with user acquisition and stuff like that, kind of just like a typical mobile publisher would. But I don't think they're going to hire out a development team, because it almost muddies up their story, right? Their whole story currently, and the reason why they trade at a 25 times sales multiple when Zynga and Galoo and SciPlay and every other mobile game company in the world trades at 3 or 4 times revenue, is because they're quote unquote not hit driven. They're, not a developer. They're a platform. They get this social media platform multiple. Same thing we've talked about with Roblox. It's almost like not sexy to be a gaming company anymore now. Now, if you're a gaming company, you want to be a platform. It's kind of the old joke we had the last couple of months. Everything becomes a metaverse. Everything's becoming kind of a platform. Nothing just wants to be a game anymore.
It's the evolution towards Disney. Platform is just
who
a
here
step
thinks
towards
Chris
house
is-
of brands.
Is spot on here. Cell phone product placement with skills in the next blockbuster rom-com.
It makes sense. That would be a good use of his board seat.
Hey, maybe Skills should buy Zynga.
I mean, I don't know if they could. I guess they could.
Maybe. Are they
they're about the same size?
They're. I think Skills is quite larger.
But then that pigeon, to Jeff's point, that pigeonholes them as a developer of games or a publisher of games rather than a platform. So
yes.
I still,
one
but it's
of
still
the problems, I was reading about this the other day. One of the problems that I think Skills has right now in attracting bigger publishers and bigger developers to the platform, because it seems obvious. Like, why wouldn't Zynga just put Words with Friends on there? And it's like, hey, we can start betting on Words with Friends. That sounds kind of fun. The way I understand is that
does it sound fun?
Well, no, but for some people, could sound fun.
Scrabble's awesome.
He's up on the criticism here of Words with Friends. Come on.
As I understand it, there's an exclusivity currently. So if you're on the platform, you can't monetize through ads or through in-app purchases. So your other forms of monetization. So a lot of publishers that already have strong monetization models aren't going to cannibalize their own game. They would have to develop a different game for that platform.
The more I'm learning about the Skills platform, the more I'm having real reservations. Like, I did not know that you had to forsake all other revenue sources to go on Skills.
Well, there's a lot of other problems with Skills too. The fact that they don't pay, the Apple and Google fee is just a app. I don't understand for the life of me how they get away with that when every other app on the App Store has to pay 30% to Apple and Google. I'm pretty sure they don't.
I'm seeing a lot of red flag. This is this is a lot of risks on this business here, but whatever.
Let's move on, guys. This next one is just for Lindsay. And in fact, because Lindsay said, she spent the day painting and the fumes have destroyed her brain. So she wants a softball. Okay. So I've got the perfect softball. In fact, it's perfect for Lindsay because Lindsay, of the 5 of us here, I think has the most expertise in this area.
Ooh, I'm excited.
This is more meme kind of news in the gaming world, but still very entertaining. And that is, and this is from ScreenRant.com. It's 100 Thieves Nade Shot will get embarrassing tattoo after losing Twitter bet. So basically, he bet that if he got over 100,000 retweets on one post, he'd have to get an embarrassing tattoo. The users on Twitter decided essentially what he was getting, and the conclusion was sex is temporary. Gaming is forever. Lindsay, your comments on A, you think this was worth the 100,000 retweets, and B, how embarrassing is this tattoo exactly?
I mean, who amongst us hasn't been in a situation where they potentially wind up with an embarrassing tattoo?
Well, so William and I offline on before doing the podcast, this is maybe more of the businessy question here, which is, how many retweets is it really worth for anyone to get this tattoo? Like, for you to tattoo this, how many retweets would you personally need to get on a post? Because to me, 100,000 felt low.
Doesn't he have a ton of followers? Like 100,000 seemed like that was in the bag.
Yeah,
if it was
and Ninja retweeted it.
Okay, maybe.
Mr. Beast retweeted it. So the reach was massive.
That's why, like, you got to admit, like, the guy taking the bet knew he was going to lose, right? Like,
I think-
100%. Like,
I'm impressed that he let the audience choose. That's
I think he already had the tattoo. I think it was already on him.
But
And
if
he's
the
like, oh,
audience
shit, I gotta
chose,
figure
No, how do I
Yeah,
explain
I
this to
don't
my
know.
girlfriend?
It was planted.
It was Frosty who chose it from 100 Thieves, who's one of the ones who sort of spread who he posted this originally because I guess they had a conversation internally, and Nadeshot said, you know, in a in-person conversation, I'd do this if you get 100,000 retweets. And so Frosty, who plays for 100 Thieves, put it out to the world, and he's the one who decided, based on user suggestions, what the final, you know, saying was going to be. He could have had it before. The question is, 100,000 seems low. What was interesting is he said for 1 million retweets, he would let Twitter decide where it goes.
That's not worth it. For a guy who's already
I could never do that.
that's just insane.
So I'm just curious, what is the right number here? Is 100,000 clearly was? Is there some number where you guys would have this tattooed?
Well,
That's true. What is your retweet number? Everyone has to.
I said 10 million. At 10 million retweets, I feel like, you could.
Paul,
hide that
you are
somewhere.
really tempting me to start this. Like you are tempting me so much.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but the what it is versus where it is, like where it is a whole different animal for me.
Yeah.
Like if we're like, there's no like, am I gonna put what was it? Sex is temporary on my forehead? No.
Gaming is
Like,
forever.
yeah, no. Like
I don't know.
no,
Paul might have
There's
to.
basically no
I'm this
amount of
close
money
to
for that.
looking for 10 million.
yeah,
retweets.
really.
I would have to already be famous for this to even be an option. Because if I'm not famous and I just have to get a dumb tattoo, then it's not worth it.
I know that is sort of the problem with these challenges, right? Is like they're actually like terrible examples for people because you don't want some poor kid to be like 100 retweets and I get like I'm dumb tattooed on my, and that's like it's not role model behavior,
right? Well, I see your point, William, but there's a business state which is like gaming has really like, and I'm always amazed when I see things like this because it truly has gone completely mainstream, right? Like this is, you don't get, and I think he almost hit the 1 million retweets. Like I think they were quite close. I don't know what it finished at, but you're talking about massive audiences now, you know, and it extends beyond gaming, right? Like tattoos like this are really much broader pop culture. It's always interesting to see when gaming sort of starts to cross these lines, when gaming influencers become sort of broader mainstream celebrities. I don't know. No one wants to do it at 10 million with me. That's fine. I don't know.
Oh, I'll
Sorry,
do it at 10 million. I already have a bunch of tattoos and I don't regret any of them. I figure at this point I should lower my percentage here.
Yeah, you gotta take the bet. You're gonna go.
None are on your forehead.
Yeah.
No,
not-
that would be
Neck
problematic.
down and not on my hands.
But really, like, imagine your dad had that tattoo. Just how like pretty hilarious if it's like your
No,
grandpa.
it's the
But I'm talking about like
opposite.
dad
It's the
level.
opposite.
I can't wait to embarrass my kids with dumb shit like that.
If your dad had the story to go with it, like, Dad, what's up with that tattoo on your arm? Well, when I was young, there was something called the Twitter.
The Twitter.
Now we just all log on to Roblox every day instead.
That's right. Yeah. Before Roblox infiltrated our daily lives.
Yeah.
No, we're farmed. We're just plugged
First,
into
you'd
our
have to
brains.
step out of like your exoskeleton and be like, "This is my real skin. This is called skin. Here's this writing on it." Like, what?
Now that I think about it, Jeff and I's bet should not have been for $1,000 on Roblox. It should have been for a "sex is temporary, gaming is forever" tattoo.
Way to change.
I would
No,
do that.
it should have been a gaming is temporary, Fall Guys is forever tattoo.
Yeah,
That's the-
that aged well.
Fair enough.
Guys, I want to move on. In other gaming sort of crossing over to the mainstream kind of news, this article was particularly interesting to me, maybe less so for you guys, but this was from geekwire.com, talking about a Halo TV series that will air in 2022 on the new Paramount Plus streaming service. Here's the question I have for you guys, because I want to bring it really back to gaming more than anything else. Halo TV show makes so much sense to me, right? What was somewhat confusing to me here is why Paramount Plus, right? Because I assume these rights were up for grabs. Why, we come back to Twitch. Maybe Twitch doesn't care so much about gaming anymore, but if they're buying rights for the international basketball, whatever, like why not rights for a Halo TV series? Where are the gaming media outlets, right? The Twitches of the world. Why are they not scooping these opportunities up? Why are they going to services like Paramount Plus?
Because, well, first of all, how many, I want to point this out to the listeners, like how many streaming services can we have?
But I think
like,
Twitch is bigger than Paramount Plus also, right?
This is why it's so unusual that Twitch has this monopoly on gaming, because look at how quickly static content has just, there's there's Peacock, there's Hulu, there's Netflix, there's
and half of them are owned by Disney.
Paramount.
Every channel on linear TV now has a plus.
Yeah, as a streaming equivalent. It's crazy. But this specifically, I've got a very simple explanation for this: is when you're gonna take a brand like Halo, right, and you're gonna do an extension for it, you have two reasons to do the extension. One is money; you're gonna get paid, right? The other reason is Halo grow the brand, right? Like not that Halo, but like Halo effect, grow the brand, right? Like you think by having this, it's going to drive demand and interest in your core service. I think Microsoft looked at this and said, yeah, everybody who's going to play Halo knows what Halo is. Let's be honest. It's been the marquee face of, our gaming for years. This TV show is not going to be a great means of acquiring a bunch of new users. But I'll tell you what, might be a way to get money. And I get the sense that have all the people willing to pick up this IP, Paramount paid the most because they clearly have a little sci-fi thing going on there, and maybe they're getting some traction with Star Trek, and they're hoping Halo can slot in to back it, fill it. So I think it's plain and simple. Paramount paid the most. They sold it at the end.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, William. Well said. I think you're probably absolutely right.
Can we high five through the?
So you guys don't think there was no more optimal place? If you're
Jeff,
3-4-3,
I'm coming.
Here, hold on. I'll make it easier.
Getting worse.
Here you go.
Oh, I escaped. It worked. My ploy worked. I escaped the bottom. Lindsay, Victoria, deal with it. You're in prison now.
Here's the question for you guys. If I'm 3-4-3 Industries, is Paramount Plus the optimal outcome?
No.
Well, if they
Let me answer that, no.
If they've dropped off a bag of money,
but if no one watches the show, right? Again, do you get another shot at crossing over? Because we've seen this before, right? When a gaming brand tries to cross over into TV or movies or like other forms of traditional entertainment, and it fails, you rarely see like a second go at it. And so if this doesn't pan out for whatever reason, because Paramount Plus, and I don't think this is the case, but Paramount Plus goes the way of a Quibi, right? No one's watching. Halo has sort of given away their crown. 343 has given away their crown jewel, rights brand to definitely not the biggest streaming service on the planet. Yeah. And Halo, I would argue, in gaming is as tier 1 brand as it gets.
Well, I think, Paul, I think that's like Halo hasn't been relevant to the mainstream gaming for a couple years now, right? Like that's one of the big reasons why there's so much pressure on the new Halo is it really needs to do a lot of lifting to revive the franchise to its iconic status, right? I get your thought, and I'm sure there was a school of thought that said this should be a Netflix original debut. But, you could also argue that maybe there's logic with it's good to be this will clearly be a launch title on the Paramount Plus service, right? So Paramount Plus, as we know, because we've learned the lesson from Stadia, they can't just market Paramount Plus, a great streaming service, Paramount Plus. They have to market the content that is on the streaming service. So you could look at it this way as Netflix probably isn't going to go out and run national campaigns saying Halo now on Netflix. There's going to put Halo on Netflix, right? Paramount Plus might actually go out and run national campaigns saying see Master Chief's face first time Paramount Plus, So there could be some synergies there. But yeah, mainly I just think, I really think this is a highest bidder scenario. I just go back to that. I just think they have decided that, and I disagree with your point that game properties only get one chance to cross over. That might be true for weaker or softer properties like, Prince of Persia. Sorry, that's still a great property, but Halo, you're telling me they couldn't get another show greenlit in 2 years? It's Microsoft. Come on. Like I believe that the property can take, can survive multiple bites at the apple here.
Do you put Halo on the same level as like a Witcher in this context?
I put it above a Witcher.
Oh, yeah.
Above a
So
Witcher.
if The Witcher had flopped, you think they would have had a second crack at it?
No. I'm saying I think Halo is a stronger brand than The Witcher. I think if The Witcher had flopped, probably is never going to come back, because people would have looked at it and said that's some weird sci-fi fantasy story with mutants, and it's coming from a non like top 3 EU market. Like, leave it alone. Of course it didn't work. But Halo, marquee sci-fi franchise that's anchored multiple console generations, that gets a couple tries.
Yeah, I think William's right. William made another great point. I mean, that this is going to be a tentpole release for Paramount Plus, and it's not like we're kind of talking about Paramount Plus right now as if it's like they're putting it on PBS or like the Weather Channel. Paramount Plus is the premier. It is going to be CBS Viacom's premier streaming brand, right? So they're going to, Viacom's a $50 billion company. Like, this is going to be a massive project for Viacom.
That's the other point here, actually, is like, who gets attached to this, right? Because the reality is, it's not just the people. Like, the streaming company isn't just like buying the rights to the show and leaving it alone. Like, they're actually doing the talent management and making sure that this is produced correctly here, right?
Yeah.
Like, so maybe it could be as simple as, and we're kind of really digging deep here, but maybe Paramount Plus has some really great directors. It is CBS Viacom, that they could attach to this project. They went to Netflix, who's going to do this? And Netflix is like, well, my cousin has always wanted to do, he played Halo a lot. They go to Paramount Plus and they're like, look, we have Gary, Sarah, and Michael. They've done, I don't know, Secret Life of Pets. I don't know, whatever a hit movie is. Yeah. I have no idea.
Maybe they've got Jerry Bruckheimer lined up. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe they have Jerry Bruckheimer lined up. Jerry's like, hey, fresh off of his skills appointment.
So there was actually, if you guys remember, and it is mentioned in the article, that Showtime was supposed to make a Halo movie along with Steven Spielberg and Amblin Entertainment. Like, that was supposed to be in the works at some point. And I think it's no longer going to happen. I think
Showtime is owned by Viacom, correct? CBS Viacom.
Yes.
So
yeah,
kind of
maybe there's a right.
Exactly
there,
why
yeah.
This is the case.
Well, can we just have a daily reminder that the World of Warcraft movie wasn't good? Like, how did that one happen?
And why don't they get a second crack at it, William?
Yeah, that's another one where it's like, just do the do-over. We're all waiting. We'll all pretend it didn't happen with you. We'll all be like, oh, there was only...
and pretend it's good, because I convinced myself this is still a decent film because it's WoW, and I know it's terrible. I know it's really bad.
This is like the Dungeons and Dragons movie was bad, but the direct to DVD Dungeons and Dragons 2 was amazing. This is like one of those like secrets that like people don't tell you about. Like, seriously, go watch the direct to DVD D&D movie. It's amazing.
Chris says Halo got super dollars to be the Mandalorian for Paramount Plus. Yeah, I think that's a perfect analogy. I don't know how, like, I'm curious to see how much subscription, like how much Disney Plus can attribute directly to the Mandalorian in terms of signups, but I'm sure it's quite large. Castlevania wasn't mainstream, and it was one of the biggest shows on Netflix. It's true. This is why, like, I'm surprised Netflix didn't pay a bigger price. I'm surprised. Even like a G4 TV, which is an NBC Universal Peacock, property, they're relaunching. How cool would it have been to, relaunch with a Halo show as part of your G4 TV channel?
But also think about how content on Netflix is consumed too, right? Like, I'll point out a problem too, which is maybe the binge content model that Netflix has isn't great for brand Halo, right? It's not great for brand Halo because you get like 3 days of people talking about it and then it's done. The episodic release format that some of these other platforms like Disney Plus and presumably Paramount Plus, I'm guessing, is much better for brand Halo, because your 10 episodes of content give you 10 weeks of media and promotion and everything, not like 5 days. So,
guys, hold on. I actually want to read one more comment here. Chris says Steven Spielberg is executive producer. Big play for Paramount Plus.
There we go. See,
I just want to test the room and anyone who's in chat. Would you guys sign up for Paramount Plus just for the Halo show?
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask that about a couple minutes ago. And I agree with William's point about Netflix being almost too busy for this. Like they probably want it to have a lot of attention. It's definitely, it's a huge win on Paramount's part. Obviously they probably got it because they were the highest bidder, but I think this is going to be great for both of them. And so to answer your question, I might. Yeah, I might. I mean, it's what you can cancel it after you watch it if there's nothing else you want. Like,
I'm only going to sign up for Paramount Plus for one thing, and that's Top Gun, which is a Paramount film.
I'm sorry. I'm just
coming. It's all coming full circle. Jerry Bruckheimer actually, produced it with Paramount Pictures.
I'm just dying. I have this mental image that like they do this huge. They assign all these big directors of this huge marketing campaign. You go to watch the show, and it's like literally direct to the video game. It's like Master Chief picks up the sword and it's just like lunging at people for 45 minutes.
It's some YouTube video that they just repurposed.
Somebody in the background saying, "Sticky bomb, throw the sticky bomb."
Chris says, "Yep, and as a parent, great to show my son the brand that is kind of out of date in today's FPS market."
There you go.
True. All right, guys.
This is what Daddy played.
I still have my fingers crossed for a new Halo. It's not looking good. Halo Infinite is not.
It got delayed, right? It got delayed, right?
Yeah, because
it's delayed till fall.
Well, everyone ragged on the trailer that they put out. I don't know if you guys remember that, but
I didn't get why did people not like that trailer? Does anyone know the TLDR on that?
It looked old. It looked like they hadn't done anything to Halo since the last Halo.
Everything looked the same.
So the question was, what have they been developing?
It's better that they delayed it, right? We can't, as an industry, both complain when games come out and aren't, fully baked, and then also complain when things are delayed. Obviously, we want things to come out.
I said it on
good,
the podcast. It's the greatest quote. It's the greatest quote ever. A late game doesn't stay late forever, but a bad game is bad forever. It's so true. You're always better to delay.
It's almost like there's underlying theory there that Stadia could have used.
Chris has come to think of it. There was a Halo show on Netflix that didn't do well.
Really?
Really? It's the first time I've heard of that. What was it called? Was it actually under the Halo brand? Because that's the first I've ever heard of it.
Was it animated? It was like one of those weird animated spinoffs. Those often get.
That's true. Sometimes they do that. Mm-hmm. I have not heard of that.
Chris, tell us the name of that. We have to know because I am not aware of it. And
it was called Halo Legends. It doesn't look like it was animated.
Oh.
Yeah.
So a lot of things we've been talking about have just been totally wrong.
Halo we're not informed at all about the topic.
Let's just go through this. Halo did flop once, got another chance. So that answered Paul's
That was my
question.
point. I was right. Paul was wrong. I was
Netflix was not the better partner, actually. So we were all saying, well, why don't they do Netflix? Well, it turns out Netflix screwed it up the first time. So
quality of the
really
talent.
should do more research.
I think I reasoned into the correct thing. I said you get 2 bites of the apple and quality of talent attached matters. And it looks like Netflix botched it. And then Paramount had some great people. Done.
It says 7 anime stories relate to the popular Halo series.
Oh, if it's anime, it doesn't count.
Nothing.
Yeah, there's kind of an unwritten rule that if it's an animated series, it's a free pass. It's like putting kids at the end of a brand. It doesn't really count for the metaverse, the core lore.
Are we going to do an animated episode of this? Paul was going to set us all up.
Yes, that's true. We do have to.
We're going to VTube it or whatever.
I want to make my avatar.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun night.
Guys, that's all we have. Actually, we had 2 more stories, but here's what I want to do with them. Because we talked about it. The 2 stories are very much esports betting related. One is about Rivalry raising $20 million for esports betting. The other is about Canadian sports media and betting company Score setting their US IPO price and how much they're raising, etc. If you guys want takes on both those things from Jeff, who's the esports betting guy, I am going to put in the chat the link to go sign up for the Esports Push newsletter. So definitely go do that. And you guys will get really cool takes on those 2 stories when the newsletter drops. The next issue drops early next week. So go check it out there. Before we sign off, guys, we got to do what we always do. I know no one. I still haven't heard better ideas for a last sort of segment. But what are we playing this week? Just go around the room. Jeff, you're going to play something this week when you come visit the studio. And I'm going to sit you down at a gaming PC and maybe even make you stream on Twitch or something. I'm going to have you play something on PC. Okay. So we're going to figure that out.
We'll report on that next week. I'm excited.
That's it. Victoria, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Ooh, I was going to say I'm playing Get All of My Papers Marked before the students get back from their reading week. So sorry, I'm in the Jeff category this week, guys. But by next week, I'll have some updates.
Okay. Lindsay?
Yeah, silly you guys. This is like the first week of my life I wanted to play games more than watch TV. It was very big news. It lasted for more than one day, too.
The question is, did you put more time into gaming than you did into TV?
No, Paul, don't get crazy.
Oh.
I still have to watch
that is the trend.
So
I still have to watch Leah Remini's series on Scientology. Priorities.
Yeah.
That series was not very good, and I like Leah Remini. One of my favorite shows is King of Queens.
Ooh,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a little.
There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack.
Guys, this is a multi-layered onion here, folks.
We can talk about that.
Lacrosse,
offline,
King of Queens, the Push newsletter. This is sort of the Mona Lisa of.
I have a Bristol board in my head of Jeff, and I can't believe I just put his favorite show is King of Queens on it.
Well,
Yeah.
it's always on. It's always on at 11 o'clock at night on like linear TV. That or Seinfeld.
Exactly.
I think it fits.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've been
King
playing.
of Queens is a godlike New York City show. Well played. There you go. Yeah. William, what were you playing this week?
So I have a confession to make, which is I actually played a fair bit of Neo 2 this week. Just because I like that game. I like any samurai game. I made a commitment to myself I was going to invest in it. I started to get good enough to get the burst counter timing, which is really not that hard. Like that's pretty pathetic that I'm saying that as an achievement, but I'm kind of struggle now with some of those systems. So I did that. And then to be very fair, I actually, and this is rare for me, but I substituted away from gaming this week to watch a couple episodes of The Expanse because so many people have told me to watch that. It's like a sci-fi show. It's kind of like an heir to Battlestar Galactica. And I loved it. I'm like, I've only watched like 3 episodes because I don't have that much free time, guys. Don't get excited. But like, I've really enjoyed it. And I wanted a sci-fi show to like get into because my life's not the same when I don't have a good sci-fi to like, no, I can, kick back with like a glass of wine and watch or something. And like, I think this one is good. So hopefully it sustains because I've liked it so far quite a lot.
Did you not try the new season of Apex?
No, I didn't try the new season of Apex yet. No, is it worth doing?
It's good. It's the only thing I touched this week.
I did watch the speed run of Titanfall 2, then like the walkthrough that came out that got a lot of press. That was huge.
I will say, and I don't know if this has any bearing on EA's esports ambitions, but that the current meta for Apex right now in this new season, a lot of the pros are liking it, and a lot of the pros had been hating Apex up until now. So there's, who knows if they actually capitalize on that. And the other interesting Apex rumor is that supposedly the next patch, the patch notes are 3,000 words or something like that, like massive amounts of changes they're making to the game. So I don't know. Martin says, yes,
I hope it's Titans. I hope it's finally, we've been waiting for it for so long.
Yes, William, I'm mid-season 3 at the moment. It's so gritty. Cool. All right, guys, that ends this week's episode of the live stream. Don't forget, go follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's all at Biz Esports. William does very fun dances every single day on TikTok. You don't want to miss them. And follow us on YouTube if you're watching us on YouTube, The Business of Esports. The podcast will drop tomorrow. It's a great episode. Highly recommend listening to it. And go buy some Business of Esports merch, guys. The socks, there are still socks available if you're interested. They're really nice. I highly recommend them. And as always, guys, we will see you next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday for next week's after show live stream. See you guys next week.
Can't wait.